Thank you for joining us today on Louder Than Green. Today we have a very exciting guest, and if you're building anything sustainable, regenerative, or just smarter than the status quo, you're in the right place. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Green That Dream, and we specialize in helping businesses not just go green, but flourish. We focus on strategies that support people, planet, and profits by improving operations and managing resources. So if you're ready to take your business to the next level, stick around. And if you want a free growth consultation, head over to greenthatdream.com or just DM us the word growth. Now let's get into it.
In all the conversations I've had, I've only talked to 3 people who actually knew what basalt fiber was. It's relatively unknown because currently the continuous basalt fiber is not manufactured here in the United States currently. It's manufactured in either China or Russia. And so it's not well known, but once I talked to them about the physical properties of the material and the fact that it comes from igneous rock, there's a genuine interest and an excitement that goes along with that interest. So that's where there's the real environmental interest in having a sustainable material that has a lot of these physical characteristics built into the material from Mother Earth rather than being added with these synthetic and chemical type additives.
We're on today with Greg Bell. He is the founder and president of Bell Environmental and Business Consulting Services. He brings over 35 years of experience spanning material testing, erosion control, flood mitigation, and strategic consulting. Greg brings a unique blend of technical expertise and business acumen to the environmental sector. He's a strong advocate for innovative materials like basalt fiber, which is an eco-friendly alternative to synthetic plastics in erosion and stabilization products. Through his consulting work, Greg helps manufacturers and agencies adopt greener solutions, streamline operations, and improve long-term performance. His mission is simple: smarter systems for more sustainable impact. So thank you so much, Greg, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I appreciate it.
So Greg, yeah, if you want to just give us a quick version of your journey from, materials testing to then starting your own consulting firm.
Yeah, I'll try and give you the Reader's Digest version here. So I did spend 27 years in the material test business, and that touches every industry. I don't think most people can appreciate the amount of testing that goes into any product, really. From the foam that you're sitting on right now on your chair to car seats, weather stripping, biomedical application as far as needle puncture testing, for delivery devices as well. So I've been in clean rooms, you name it, all across the country, and it's been an interesting journey. And then I had been with 4 different companies in the material test space, and really just needed a change, and got into business consulting. And one of the opportunities was to help my community where I was living at the time address some flooding issues. And that got me into flooding, which then progressed into erosion repair. And that's kind of where I'm at today. Now, what's unique now is that in that regard, I never felt that I have an opportunity to blend my material test background with my erosion and flood mitigation experience. But this basalt fiber material that I'm really focused on right now has really done exactly that, because it combines my knowledge from my material test days and applying that to current erosion products that utilize a great deal of different type of synthetic materials, typically plastics, polypropylenes, high density polyethylene materials, which are heavily tested and I know a good deal about. That really kind of brought everything together for me, and that's where I am today, and trying to provide both environmental and business consulting services, and sometimes they can blend together as well.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So for those who have never heard of it, can you please tell us what basalt fiber is and what makes it so different from the synthetic, erosion control products that are used today?
Yeah, so basalt fiber is unique in that it's a sustainable material from the earth. It's actually basalt material is found in igneous rock, which is basically lava flows that have hardened over the millennia. Each lava flow has different types of, let's say, mineral content to it. And basalt fiber requires a certain levels of mineral content to really be able to manufacture. And the manufacturing process is really to take this igneous rock and then melt it down into a molten state and then spin it into a fiber material that is very similar in how you would spin a yarn in many of the different places I've been to in the past. So it then can be utilized as a woven material or a knitted material, knitting to a little bit less degree, and then also used as a non-woven type material. And the difference is a lot of times when people think of a sustainable material or a green solution, they're thinking they have to give something up, in their product. And in all honesty, the physical properties of the material are so unique in that you're actually gaining longevity, naturally gaining UV resistance, higher tensile strength material that you're actually gaining for your product by substituting it for a synthetic material, or in some cases, maybe even supplementing your existing product line. Can also be combined with other materials to create a composite material as well. So it has a lot of flexibility, and specifically, I'm focused on applying basalt fibers for erosion products such as turf reinforcement matting or a non-woven geotextile type material that a lot of people don't know. Whenever you see riprap along a shoreline, the best management practice is to lay a geotextile fabric down that's called basically a filter fabric, and that's typically a non-woven polypropylene material. So even your riprap installs that you think are all rock actually include plastic materials. And many of these materials in the sites where you have erosion are typically along water bodies. So we want to be very careful for the long term and generations to come as to exactly what we're putting along our water bodies because of the additives that are used to actually make these plastic materials what they are for the applications they're used for. They can include some harmful things in the long term that can be taken into the water and therefore into the food chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Like microplastics, which are probably not even really looked at from an environmental standpoint in regards to those products, right?
Yeah. Yeah, to touch on microplastics, what gets the most publicity is microplastics as a result of improper disposal of, let's say, water bottles and food containers and things of that nature. And the truth is that it's kind of an evolving science now. And it's said that human beings can have a teaspoon of microplastics in their bodies right now. And, when you really think about it, we're really surrounded by plastics. Plastics are used for some of the clothing that we wear, the seats that we're sitting on. The foam material is a type of plastic material. Even I pointed out to one of my neighbors that it seems like the world's getting wrapped in plastic. And I said, it's even in your sod. And she said, in my sod? And I said, yeah, look at your sod. There's a green material that is used to put these rolls of sod together. Well, that's plastic material. It's a grid for the root structure to grow around to lay it down.
That image of the world wrapped in plastic really stuck in my head when we talked about that. Can you share some examples of products or situations where basalt fiber is best suited for, and also just an example of where it solved a problem that traditional materials couldn't?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's an evolving business because what I'm trying to do is really, number one, educate and raise awareness about basalt fiber. I've been contacting manufacturers throughout our country that currently manufacture erosion solutions for both bank stabilization and slope stabilization products that are made from synthetic materials. And one of the things I am really thankful for is that when I've talked to them, there is a real deep knowledge of the problems that plastics can present from an environmental standpoint. And some of the companies even have directors of sustainability, and I've spoken with them as well. So there is genuinely a desire to find a sustainable material. And I believe the starting point for most of these companies is really to use it as a supplement rather than a substitute for their current products, because it is new. The material itself has been around and been imported for 25 years here into the country. And I'm working with one of my clients that has been importing basalt fiber for over 25 years now and producing finished products, woven and non-woven and knitted materials. So, but he was not very familiar with erosion products and the extensive use of synthetic materials. So I brought that knowledge to him, and he brought his basalt fiber knowledge to me. And that's how we're working together. And I feel like it's a really good pairing of the knowledge bases. Each state has different regulatory barriers. And yeah, those regulatory barriers, for example, there's a growing desire for regulatory people in different states to not want to approve synthetic materials along intercoastal waterways or marshes or high quality streams, typically also referred to as trout streams. So that pretty much just leaves a geology solution, which is just using stone. And I actually just put a LinkedIn post out today as to the shortcomings of riprap and why it's really not a long-term solution. What I'm trying to do in parallel with talking to manufacturers of these bank stabilization, slope stabilization products is also to reach out to regulatory contacts to educate them on basalt fiber. Basalt fiber, in all the conversations I've had, I've only talked to 3 people who actually knew what basalt fiber was. It's relatively unknown because currently the continuous basalt fiber is not manufactured here in the United States currently. It's manufactured in either China or Russia. And so it's not well known, but once I talked to them about the physical properties of the material and the fact that it comes from igneous rock, there's a genuine interest and an excitement that goes along with that interest. And what really needs to happen is bringing some products to market with basalt fiber that we then will have to officially put in front of the regulatory bodies for approval. One of the other points, we touched on microplastics. But there's also an emerging science as it relates to PFAS. PFAS is considered a forever chemical that is found in some plastic materials. It's really getting more publicity recently with PFAS being found downstream from certain manufacturing plants of plastics and other types of coating products. So, for example, polypropylene and high-density polyethylene by themselves is not really damaging necessarily to the environment, but to make the material pliable or rigid, it requires an additive. To make it green or tan or orange, it requires an additive. To make it UV resistant or fire resistant, those are different additives. And some of those additives can include these forever chemicals, which when you look at these bank stabilization and slope stabilization installs, that's a lot of material going next to water bodies that over time, as they degrade or get exposed to UV, or there's a forest fire, all that synthetic material can end up in the water table. So that's where there's the real environmental interest in having a sustainable material that has a lot of these physical characteristics built into the material from Mother Earth rather than being added with these synthetic and chemical type additives.
Glad you mentioned that. I don't think that we really think about those things when we think about plastics. I mean, plastic is bad, but then you think about all the chemicals that are involved that do degrade over time and get into our ecosystem. You talked about introducing this product to people and manufacturers, and it sounds like you're getting a lot of positive response. Are people and or businesses open? Is there more resistance than not?
First of all, there's a genuine interest in the material. The companies that I've approached and presented to I have in my, let's say, sales funnel for ongoing follow-up, typically we'll send a sample of 6 ounce and 24-ounce woven material and then a non-woven sample for them to examine. After they get those samples that have been previously produced, not specifically for erosion type applications, they're very impressed. So that moves us to the next step in talking about ideas for, co-developing a specific product that can open up. So that where I think it is really a supplement for their existing products is the fact that we can open up some new markets to them because of what I just talked about as it relates to regulators wanting sustainable material where synthetic materials have been previously, blocked. And that would be, along sensitive water bodies, again, like the intercoastal waterway, marshes, and high quality streams, because the material itself is inert. And it also is non-flammable. As a matter of fact, the material will melt at 1400 degrees C, which equates to 2644 degrees Fahrenheit. So even if it melts, it's basically like a rock going into the water rather than all these synthetic materials that have gone into the water, like you saw out in Los Angeles after the fires. They had rains and it washed a lot of those synthetic materials that were used in the building process of these homes, and it's causing some real environmental problems in California. And I would add one other thing too, that, as we see the government starting to downsize and they're pushing more responsibility at the state levels. There's a website called Safer States, and they have a particular map on there that shows each state and the PFAS rules or laws and regulations. And it's basically a patchwork of different regulations from one state to another that have been introduced and adopted. Now start to look at it from a manufacturer's point of view, where they had one product that they could sell nationally across all these state lines. Now you're talking about how are they going to efficiently manufacture different products with different materials for all these different states to comply with the regulations? Well, the basalt fiber would allow them to do that because, again, the material's inert and it's sustainable. So, where currently they're looking at it and saying, hey, we'd be really interested in basalt fiber, but certainly the cost point has to be right for us as well. I do think that, the formula is going to be changing annually based on, the crackdown state by state on PFAS as well as microplastics and the potential for those synthetic materials to go into the water body. So the formula is definitely going to be changing, and I do feel like, we're really on the cusp of some real industry change.
That's really a great point, and that's very interesting and exciting to think this deregulation could actually help environmentally because from a manufacturing standpoint, going across state lines is now going to be even more regulated and with each state being able to do their different things. So that could really help this, right?
Yeah, and I'd add that we're obviously in a very divided political state right now in the country. And what's very unique about this material is that we want to drive manufacturing and create jobs here in the United States. Well, if we can get to a certain point as it relates to demand for basalt fiber, the client that I'm working with really does want to become the first manufacturer of continuous basalt fiber right here in the United States. So that satisfies the right side. On the left side of the aisle, hey, we want a sustainable material that's a viable replacement for some plastics and meets the environmental needs on the left. So very rarely do you find something that can please both sides of the aisle, and I think we found it with basalt fiber.
Yeah, that's very exciting. You mentioned the possibility of manufacturing it in the States. Um, is it a viable option to manufacture? And what about the raw material. Is that is also available in the States?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's a perfect igneous rock mineral deposit right here in the United States. And
Nice.
since we already have the finished product capabilities, all we really need is to build that manufacturing site where that raw material can be taken from the earth and then transported and then melted down and turned into the continuous fiber. So
Right.
it is viable, but it's interesting because I just had some texting back and forth just today with a potential client, and it's a chicken and egg situation. On the one hand, we want lower costs. We need to be competitive from a pricing standpoint. So we need to, drive up efficiencies and create volume. So we have to sell the product to bring costs down to increase the volumes. At a certain point, we're going to experience, really from the importing of these materials, we're really going to stretch that supply at a certain point if I do my job well. And then that, in essence, will require the demand side will push for and justify the need for building this manufacturing facility. But we have to really start to drive the demand and designing products from basalt fiber currently by importing the material in. Now, with the infrastructure bill that was introduced about 4 years ago, there is a requirement for the material or the products to be manufactured in the United States. Well, the finished product can be in this case, but the raw materials coming from overseas. Certainly, tariffs are going to have a big impact on that. I definitely believe that there will be better deals for the long-term benefit of both parties to level the playing field as it relates to tariffs. So I think the current instability in bringing materials in from another country is temporary at best, but then it'll get to a point of how can you drive more efficiency by manufacturing here? So I truly believe that that's the path forward. And it definitely has applications in construction as well. There's some testing that's been done with basalt fiber added to concrete that actually adds to its strength and longevity. And it's used in, body armor and ballistic shields and so on. It's used as an insulation material because of its heat resistance. So there's a lot of applications far beyond the erosion products that I'm really focused on as well.
This is very fascinating. Are there other countries using basalt fiber in for erosion products yet, or in other ways on a bigger scale?
To my knowledge, no. I was kind of surprised when I saw that. Now, I could be wrong, but I did do some exhaustive searches. I do have a lot of supportive documentation that I've actually used AI to develop in comparison documents of basalt fiber from a sustainability standpoint, environmental impact standpoint, comparisons of basalt fiber to polypropylene, high density polyethylene, fiberglass, and even Kevlar. So it's been very helpful in the information that I supply. I've got like 9 or 10 different types of PDF documents that I send after I've done a presentation so that these engineers can take a deep dive into this material to really understand it. And what's interesting is, from my standpoint, really get a level of satisfaction when the light bulb does go off for them.
Yeah, that's great. It's got to be such a great feeling to help people understand. So, talking more about that, I mean, I know you do business consulting. Are you integrating that consulting into this effort, or is it a separate thing within your business operations?
Yeah, I think where the business consulting comes into play will be once we have a manufacturing company as a co-development partner. Now we need to really launch the product. So with my experience with the materials of basalt fiber, I can help the marketing department create content as it relates to differentiating the basalt product from their current, synthetic product. And where you could actually use this material and also providing sales training and supportive documentation. So there's on the business consulting side, there's even a strategic component to this as well. I think there's a wonderful story for the manufacturers that want to co-develop products to be able to really talk about, hey, we are concerned about the environment too. What we're trying to do is solve an environmental problem that's called erosion. But what we don't want to do is create a long-term environmental problem with our solutions because they include synthetics, which is, I think, really why they're open to the idea of a sustainable material, one that they really haven't heard of before. And honestly, we're at a point with synthetic materials that it has been the only viable solution for these products for the longest time. So they're very open to listening and learning about this material and then discussing it and working towards development. And again, there's a strategic component, then there's tactical components, there's training, there's content creation. Those are all areas that I can help out in.
Okay. So your effort right now is creating awareness until the manufacturing part of it can get developed.
Well, what I'm really trying to do is drive co-development of current products now with product that we're importing in from overseas with the existing supply chain that we have set up. And then once we bring those products to market and create demand, we might outstrip the supply for those channels. And that is the time when we start to forecast and look at that. And now you start to see lead times starting to move out further because of the demand. That's when you come in and say, hey, we can justify the financial expenditure for the manufacturing facility for the raw material and the manufacturing of the continuous basalt fiber material. So there's the here and now and where we're at, and then there's the plan for the future. So that's a strategy of ours as well.
What do you see the biggest gaps or inefficiencies that you're having to deal with?
Well, I think that there's so many outdated best management practices out there. And, government can move slowly. And if this current product is specified and it's considered a BMP, this is what we're going to use. We don't want to pay
Right.
extra money for something that's better because this meets our need right now. So again, that's kind of like a chicken and egg situation too. And, that's a hurdle that I can't overcome myself, which is why we're looking for co-development partners in these manufacturing companies that are large national companies that have a good marketing engine and have these relationships with DOTs, construction, large infrastructure projects, and also regulatory as well. I think the combination really can come together. Is it going to happen overnight? No, by no means.
No.
I hope that I can look back 5 years from now and really feel proud about starting the ball down the hill and seeing it get bigger and gain momentum. I really want to leave a mark and let's leave the planet better than how I found it. This has a true gap and a need in the market. I hope that's a professional legacy that I can leave and get moving before I do retire.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. So it sounds like a lot of things are working well, right, in your business and your efforts. Where are you feeling stretched? If you had more capacity, whether that's time, capital, team, resources, what would you focus on?
Well, that's a really tough question to answer because right now I don't feel stretched, but I do, let's forecast being stretched at some future date where if I had my way, and I truly believe, my client who's the manufacturer of the finished products had his way, he would be, already starting to build this manufacturing facility
Hmm.
here in the country for the continuous basalt fiber. So that is, really the top thing on the wish list. I definitely feel that really, when you think about it, we're creating a whole new material, whole new market that goes even way beyond just the erosion type products that I'm talking about. And
Hmm.
I really feel that that's where ultimately my job is to really build the demand to financially justify the building of that manufacturing facility. And I think too, I'm speaking with a number of manufacturers, and we're kind of at the same stage in the sales funnel with them across the board, and they have their internal conversations as well. So you have to be patient, and I've only kind of become a bit more patient as I guess with age comes wisdom. And there's a certain progression that things move at that you just have to
Yeah,
accept. And trying to do anything new and innovative, you definitely have to be patient.
patience. Yes, I agree with you 100%. And I do think as we age, that the patience somehow gets a little easier.
I will say, I think that we're the sum of our life's experiences, and I've had good experiences. I've had many bad experiences. I've
Yeah.
learned so much more from the bad experiences, and who fails to learn from history is doomed to repeat it. So I'm
Mhm.
really trying to look at things very holistically, very different, and putting myself in the shoes of the manufacturers and distributors
Yeah,
and regulatory people that I talk to, and it's all intertwined. It's going to take time, and I'm just kind of a singular voice at this point. But I'm hoping that in adding co-development partners, I can add bigger, louder voices and many more voices as we move forward.
absolutely. So that leads into one of my last questions that I have for you. You've mentioned co-development partners. Are there any other key partnerships or connections or operational support or financing or that you're actively looking for to help grow this movement?
Well, I think on the financing side, beyond the co-development and getting
Hmm.
some manufacturers that want to move forward with a specific
Hmm.
product. Here's an example of our current product. Here are the specifications. Here's the testing standards. Beyond that would be from a financing standpoint, being able to have either a financial partner, a group, or
Hmm.
bank that would be willing to move forward with the manufacturing facility. So I definitely believe that that's a bridge that we're soon to cross. There are conversations that are already happening now. Hopefully, this podcast actually makes its way to some people that the light bulb would be going off and saying,
Right.
hey, I've got an opportunity to get into new industry and business with a brand new material. And you know
Yeah.
how it is with certain products and certain materials, the first to market, you typically gain the market share. So there is a
Right.
unique opportunity for people hearing all this. I'm more than happy to certainly do a presentation. My presentation is geology versus chemistry, because in essence, that's what
Mhm.
it is. We're talking about igneous rock versus all these different synthetic chemically based materials. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that presentation and really educate people on the benefits of this material, both from a product side, but also an environmental side.
Absolutely. That's great. I do really think that you have this amazing effort and product that checks so many boxes of what we need from a practicality standpoint, then an environmental standpoint. So I'm just
It
curious, have
really
you had any conversations with investors or banks or anybody yet about this?
I haven't, but my client, who's the manufacturer of the finished products, has.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah, there's some good opportunities there. And
Okay.
I think, one of the other things I'd mention is that I have done some presentations for college professors, like
Uh,
at Clemson Extension, kind of key influential bodies like environmental lobbyist groups, also people very tied to organizations tied to regulatory bodies as well, to really talk to them about basalt fiber, thinking I'm really trying to go at it in a number of different directions. So the more people that I can reach with
mhm.
this message, I think is the best way that once we do have a product, I can take down some of the barriers parallel while we're developing new products, in essence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's great, Greg. This is very exciting. I'm very interested in helping support this effort and maybe making some connections for you because I do have connections with people who want to make investments, things like this. So that's something we can talk more about. So my
If there
last
are,
question,
I would say, Amy, if there are, let's say, sustainability investors, heck, I know they even have mutual funds now that are
yes,
green type
yes.
mutual funds or sustainability. It all kind of goes together from a financial standpoint.
Mhm.
And, for me, you can tell by my voice, I'm excited about this
Yeah.
because I really genuinely feel this from a personal standpoint. I'm from a town in northwestern Pennsylvania that was founded on the petroleum products industry. Just upstream from my hometown is where they discovered oil at Drake Well near Titusville, Pennsylvania. And I even worked at an oil refinery. Those plants, the headquarters of a large refining company, they shuttered their doors. And now, my hometown's kind of a Rust Belt town. And I've seen what that industry can do from the ground level. I worked as a college employee in the summer. Trust me when I say I know about the industry and what can be left behind as well. So I really genuinely want to make a difference here and get the ball rolling for this.
I agree, and I can definitely tell you're passionate about it. And I do think that it's imperative that we get this ball rolling. And I think with the right support and connections, it could roll and develop really quickly. So I just have one last question for anyone listening who wants to support your work, wants to learn more, wants to get involved. What's the best next step, or what's the best way to reach you?
Well, if it's okay, I'm happy to share my email address as well as my cell number for people that hear this. And it sparked a bit of a fire in them to want to learn more. I want your call. I want your emails. I can be reached at BELL1216 at outlook.com. My cell number, I live in South Carolina, is 843-655-96. Be happy to, have a conversation with you on any applications, ideas you may have that I haven't thought of. I'm a great listener. I know I've done a lot of talking in this podcast, but that's what they're for. But I would really welcome the contact.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Greg, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience at this time?
I really think it's something that if you're also of the mindset where you want to make a difference, and really, if you really want to do something and you're frustrated or thinking about, hey, what could I do? This may present you with an opportunity to actually be able to do something. All too often, we see people on social media and they're typing out all their frustrations, and I'm guilty of it at times too. But I wanted to turn that energy that can be very negative into something very positive and do something that could help make a difference. And for me, this is it. If that sounds like something that you're in a position out there, whoever's listening, that you could help, I'd love to hear from you and go from there.
Great. Thank you so much. That is Greg Bell, and I really appreciate having you on our podcast, Louder Than Green.
My pleasure. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Louder Than Green. Every guest we feature and every story we share is a reminder that sustainable business is not just about what you do, it's about how you do it. I'm incredibly grateful for this community, for everyone building differently, leading with integrity, and turning up the volume on what matters most. You can find more episodes and join the conversation at www.greenthatdream.com. And remember, regeneration is a practice. Make yours heard. Do the work, share the mic, be louder than green.